Thanks. So we'll get going. I like to make sure we get done on time, get you all back to your homes and businesses. So we'll go ahead and do roll call. But before we start going, I just want to welcome Kathleen Walker. She's on the city council. She'll be joining us here as part of the council's representation. And so we can go around the room and introduce ourselves for her, which can also be the roll call. We're not as official as saying, aye for everyone, like the council is. But why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, okay. Bill Schwartz, Boring Brewing Company down at the corner.
You know who I am?
You also know who I am.
You know me.
I just met myself.
Yeah, Marcel brought you with AEC and we own the building between Double Dragon and the dentist there.
I moved back under regular travel and cruise and planning commission.
Erin Ferguson, I'm at Trimble Rentals.
And we have some,
Oh, and then we have two of our folks from Eco Northwest, Nicole Underwood and Chris Blakeney. They're going to be doing the presentation tonight on the retail market.
all right, so we'll call this meeting order and get going. First off, let's the minutes are there. And if you haven't seen, take a look at them. And we can a motion to approve the minutes. We have a quorum.
I don't know.
Oh, do you need a copy?
There were a stack of
Yeah,
copies.
I am. I'm sure. Anybody else need a copy?
I don't know if everyone was here at the last meeting there in February. If you weren't, abstained,
That would be me.
that would be you.
Mhm.
One up there. But we do have a quorum, so either if you sustain or not, that's part of the quorum. If there isn't any changes to the minutes, there is,
I just have one, my last name is Ferguson.
oh,
Did I have something?
I'm with Trimble Rentals, but it looks
Oh,
like
I'm
everyone else
sorry.
has their
I
last name,
apologize for
so.
That's fine.
When I get technical.
As somebody whose
I've
last
been
name
a
gets
Trim-
misspelled all the time.
I've been
I
a
should
Trimble
know.
longer than a Ferguson, but.
sorry about that.
It's just your identity, Erin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
We'll make sure the staff gets that adjusted and changed.
Okay.
Is there any other? That need to change? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second?
Yes, second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Hearing none, and all those abstaining? Two, and Kathleen will abstain as well, so.
So.
The minutes have been approved. All right, let's go around. This is the time to do kind of shout outs from the board members and updates that you have maybe at your own business, but in the community that you know of. But to keep those kind of brief and to the point there, but also want to hear what's going on amongst the members. So is there any updates that we? Okay, well, I don't.
Our summer camps are live for booking and filling up fast, so everybody's looking for summer camps.
Sweet.
Second half of June and most of July, before the July week.
It's good news from planning commission. We are reporting a recommendation to council. I don't think you guys did it yet. But they updated the number for our ERUs available, and it's enough to cover all the developments that have been currently approved. And so just more good news as we progress forward with that. And we took a look at workshopped the sign code a little bit, which hasn't been looked at in like decades.
It's not decades.
No. I think Jeremy and I were on the committee.
I think I've sometimes we did that twice in 1 year.
Well,
It's
it's
been maybe a while.
we were looking at some of the recommendations made that started in 2017 that have just never been adopted. So
So it's been decades.
it's been at least a decade since it's officially been updated. However, folks have worked on it in the meantime, but yes.
I think we were updating it back in like 2007, 8, 10,
Yeah.
quite often, because it would just, paintball back. But that, anyways, thank you for doing that. That's good news. Not to the light on it. We just laughed because
Yeah.
that was like the most popular thing to come in front of and hardest thing to get agreement with in the community as well. So
Yeah, I think 2013 was the last like big update to it. So,
For housing, I'm surprised and grateful that Clackamas County is still offering rent assistance for eviction protections, so we've been able to work with a couple residents to get rent assistance still. So they still have funding for that.
okay.
I'll just throw out a couple of things that I'm aware of that I've kind of been working on for a long time. And the first one is a Skycam at the Johnson Viewpoint.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh.
that's something that have been on the books for not decades, maybe, but a pretty long time. And so
Many
it-
biennia.
yeah, so it's, we went after grants that weren't successful in the past, but anyways, we're pursuing it and it's working with KGW Channel 8. You know, how they show, you know, live from Cannon Beach or, you know, whatever. And so this would be live from City of Sandy. And so it's a great marketing tool for people to see, you know, Johnson Viewpoint and kind of place us as a place to stop and stuff on their travels. And then also just the I don't know if you guys have seen the drone footage of the new skate park and the pump track and all of that. It was out on Instagram. I guess it got a huge amount of
Really?
eyes on it. And so that's kind of one of my interests here as part of this advisory board is to just kind of, my background has been working with the Mount Hood Chamber of Commerce, doing a lot of marketing around hiking, mountain biking trails, you know, biking opportunities, road biking, tourism, you know, hotel, motel, lodging guides, you know, guides that are upstairs in the lobby and all. So, you know, I think that tourism does have a really good benefit for everybody's business. It kind of just lifts everybody's boats higher. That's my interest.
Thank you.
News.
And hopefully when we meet next time, Chris Jones will have a little something more to say about tourism as well. So we were talking about that today.
All right. All right, well, thanks. David, instead of doing the econ office updates, can we do the new business first and then do that one? 'Cause
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how I thought the order was gonna go.
Yeah, no,
So that we can be
yeah, let's,
nice to our attendees online.
so next online is our friends from Eco Northwest. We're gonna update us a little bit about the retail market report that they're working on for us. Hi, guys.
Hi there, David. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Of course, let's see, I've got a presentation for you from you here, so I'm gonna go ahead and load that up. One moment, please. That's the one. And then,
So maybe you may have to turn around to see the screen up there.
okay, and here we go.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you. So just to set a little context for those that may not be familiar with this study or the history around this study in the city of Sandy. Sandy has done these. I'm sorry, are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, we've got you.
Sorry, I got a little background over here. So the city has done a study like this in the past, I think, and correct me, David, if I'm wrong, I think it was 2019 and 2014 in the past, roughly, or wait,
09 and 14.
09 and 14, excuse me. And history with us on this project is actually interesting because we had initially scoped this in 2020, February of 2020. Things changed a month later, and so the city put this on hold for some time. But now, as we're kind of coming out of that world and entering the kind of the new normal world, David thought it was time to revisit this exercise. And from what I understand, this study has been really beneficial for business owners in the past, not just for the city of Sandy itself and for David and his work, but also for businesses in using it for their own business planning purposes, for getting financing for loans with banks. And so this is really important work for the small businesses that are operating in Sandy. Next slide, if I could, please. And so the first step in our work is to define what we call a primary trade area. And that's just a word that that highlights the general geography from which support for retail services comes from. And this is very different for different commodity typologies. And you think about it in the way you shop in your own lives, people are more willing to travel greater distances for luxury goods, what we call specialty retail, versus what we call commodity retail. And commodity retail is more like your kind of typical day-to-day groceries, health and personal care services, things like that. And so we, in our attempt at defining where consumers that patronize businesses in Sandy come from, we delineated two kind of nodes as a proxy for those different commodity typologies. And one is the Fred Meyer Retail Power Center, and the other is kind of the downtown corridor. And obviously the mix of businesses within those two geographies are markedly different. And so just as a rule of thumb, a primary trade area, about 75% of your market support comes from within that geography. So when we hone in on those geographies, it gives us a really good sense of where we can start to look at demographic characteristics, consumer spending patterns, to get a sense of building a profile of what the typical consumer of a business in Sandy might be. If you go to the next slide, please. And since the last time this effort has been undertaken in Sandy, obviously technology has evolved quite significantly. And one of the really fun and actually kind of scary tools that we use for this is data that we get from a company called Placer AI. And effectively what they do is they track your cell phone. So whether you know it or not, you don't have to log on to a Wi-Fi to have your phone be pinging for a device. And so it tracks where you are most of your time versus where you are in a shopping habit, things like that. And so what we're able to do is to hone in on those two geographies that we identified for the power and type of retail and the more commodity type of retail to see where people are coming from. And that's what we're overlaying here. And so we're showing that your Fred Meyer Power Center is getting about 76% of all visitors coming from the top 6 geographies in your region, and slightly lower for downtown Sandy. And this is expected because Fred Meyer obviously is a larger retail with a broader range of commodity-oriented goods, and in some cases specialty-oriented goods, where you're effectively drawing from places like Estacada, Brightwood, and even all the way out to Government Camp. And then in downtown Sandy, you see less from these areas because you're seeing more of the retail support coming from a much more dispersed geography, right? So you think about the folks that live in Portland or Hillsborough that are making a trip to the mountain and they're stopping through on their way. And so what we're seeing in the cell phone data fits our kind of intuitive our intuitive hypothesis of what we would expect to see in a community like Sandy that is a pass-through city on the way to a major tourism destination. And so if you go to the next slide, please. So when we overlaid these, despite the fact that there was a little bit of discrepancy, there wasn't a lot of discrepancy, right? And so when we start to look at all the data that we're going to build this analysis on, we honed in on a geography that roughly conforms to a 15-minute drive time from the kind of power center. And when we looked at that, there was not a whole lot of difference. And so we honed in on this geography for us to start to build a demographic and consumer profile around to provide, an update of insights into the types of consumers that are utilizing businesses in the Sandy area. And this gets to the notion of retail gravity. Retail gravity is a term that describes, if you think about it, you're not willing to drive by an equal or worse, or excuse me, an equal or better store or worse store to get to another store, right? So if there's like, say, a Fred Meyer in Gresham and a Fred Meyer in Sandy, you can pretty much draw a line point, and people will naturally gravitate to one or the other based on their commute patterns. And so that's why we see it kind of delineate. It's not just considering where the shoppers are coming from, but also delineating where the competitive environment is, and which is why we don't kind of extend it into Gresham as far.
Chris, we've got a question here.
Sure.
Hi, Chris. I'm just curious, what about the whole commercial zone between, say, Safeway and Scooters there, you know, that has the Buy Mart and the grocery outlet and the Safeway and the health club, which I'm, you know, sure gets a huge amount of visitation. And yeah, I'm just curious about why that wasn't probably one of the, I would have imagined that's even a busier zone than downtown, maybe.
Yeah, so the reason of looking at downtown separately from the Fred Meyer, and then not looking at the Fred Meyer and the Safeway centers together, because we would expect, we're trying to delineate between the two retail typologies, and we're using the Fred Meyer as a proxy for that general typology. And we would expect the patronage patterns to be of that area to be roughly consistent with the Fred Meyer patterns. And so I mean, we could test anything and everything, right? This data is unique enough to where we could pick a business and talk about the patronage of a specific business. But that's why, is because we consider them roughly equivalent. So.
Thank you.
If you go to the next slide, please. And so based on this trade area, we take a demographic and consumer spending pattern snapshot. And one of the things that's really interesting about the Sandy area, which I'm sure isn't news to anybody in this room, is that Sandy is outperforming the region in terms of growth. Even not just Sandy itself, but when you extend it to this broader kind of primary trade area, we're seeing over the last 5 years, over the next 5 years, a growth rate of about 1.6% forecasted relative to 1% at the region level. So larger growth pattern, and that's something that we are expected to see continue. And this is both for population and households. And this is something we expect to see continue over the near term. And this is something that's a characteristic that came in part, that was in motion prior to COVID, but really accelerated during COVID. And I'm sure everybody's familiar with kind of the flight to suburban and tertiary markets as a result of shifts in migration patterns. If you don't have to commute every day, you only commute in 2 days, maybe you live in an area that has a higher quality life like Sandy, as opposed to somewhere closer in. And so this is a pretty consistent trend for tertiary and secondary cities, not just in the Portland metropolitan area, but across the country.
What does PTA stand for?
It's the primary trade area. So that's the geography on the previous slide that we have delineated. So it's referencing that geography.
And Chris, what is share of families? Is that percentage of households with somebody under the age of 18, or is that a different definition?
Yes, so it's exactly that. It's the share of households that have presence of children in the home. And so you can also see, and this we'll get to, this is a prelude to some of the consumer spending patterns that we're seeing, that Sandy has a pretty a more concentrated distribution of households that are family households, as opposed to either singles or couples without kids.
Got it.
And a much higher home ownership rate. And that is also going to get to on our next slide, we could go to and start to talk about some of these spending patterns. But in terms of income, one of the things we take a look at is how affluent or how much disposable income residents within our trade area have relative to a benchmark. In this case, the benchmark being the broader Portland metropolitan region. And we're seeing at the upper end of 75,000 and higher income ranges, fairly well distributed. There's a little bit of difference there between the 100 to 150 and the 150 and higher, but when you aggregate those together, it's generally consistent. And so we were able to say that the income, your residents or the residents within this trade area are not any worse or any better off than the region on average with respect to income, gross take-home income. Next slide, please. The other thing we look at is daytime employment. So where obviously consumer spending is not just a function of the residents that live within an area. People shop after work. They shop for lunch. They shop during lunch. Those types of things. And so one of the things we look at is the number of non-resident employees that are in the community during the day. So the Sandy, according to the recent or the 2019 EOA, has about 5,200 employees per day located within the city. We know from commuter patterns, that data that we get from the US Census Bureau, that there's a very small overlap between the number of people that live in Sandy and the number of people that work in Sandy. Most people either commute out of Sandy for work or commute into Sandy for work. And so we can feel fairly confident that 5,200 employees are non-resident employees. And so that makes up effectively 44% of the overall daytime population that is supporting businesses throughout the work week. Next slide, please. So speaking a little bit about consumer spending habits, one of the key takeaways we found when we look at the rates at which Sandy or with residents within, and excuse me, I keep saying Sandy residents, but residents within the primary trade area, so Sandy and surrounding areas. One of the key takeaways is that these folks spend a larger share of their income on their homes and on services around insurance and experiences like travel and restaurants than average. They spend less on luxury goods like super luxury goods like electronics or apparel, things like that. Next slide, please. So this is really interesting data that we get. It's called psychographic analysis, and there's companies that produce this data from a variety of sources, Census being one of them, Visa card spending or credit card spending being one of them. It comes from a company called Claritas Esri. Business Analyst. Claritas is another service that provides it, but it's roughly the same. Where they segment households into these kind of unique little groups of shared experiences and spending patterns and income categories and demographic categories. And one of the takeaways that we found, again, I alluded to in the previous slide, is that the folks that live in this area are generally more price conscious. They're generally older. They generally have more families, and so that influences the types of goods and services that they consume. Like I said, they spend more money on their homes and less money on things like clothes and things like that. So, next slide, please. To dive in a little bit about the real estate dynamics in Sandy, which is I found excuse me, previous slide.
Yeah, sure.
It's all right. Yeah. I found this really, really insightful. And so one of the things we're seeing here on the left is we're showing the growth in retail rent in Sandy over the last 10 years relative to the southeast outlying submarkets. And these submarkets are generally defined by the brokerage community. So they aggregate larger geographies by kind of shared characteristics. And it's interesting to see the rents in Sandy declining while vacancies in Sandy are are near zero. So effectively there's no space available, but rents are declining. And so when we hypothesize about why that could be, one of the things that pops up is effectively retail quality, right? So you have a larger share of more seasoned buildings that may not be keeping up with new construction that is happening in the broader market. And when we see this, it lends itself to there being probably some pent-up demand for higher quality retail product in the city. When we combine the fact that there's no retail space available and what's there is declining, it's a clear indicator in my mind of there being a little bit of pent-up demand in the market there for more premium product. And then just looking at net absorption and deliveries, how well balanced the market is functioning. This is clearly just showing that over the last 10 years, there's been very little new construction of retail, which is driving that that decline in vacancy rates. And you see some fluctuation here in absorption. But effectively, when you have absorption that is outpacing construction by a considerable margin over a period of time, that's going to lend itself well to a tightening market. Again, getting to that even in an existing market, not considering growth, being a little bit undersupplied at the moment. Next slide, please. And lastly, just as a preview of some of the work that we're doing, and I think this board or this group has had some insights into the cities that we decided to survey as a part of a case study analysis. And the purpose of this work is really to understand what's working in cities that are in a way comparable to Sandy or are what Sandy might aspire to be. And so we're doing these case studies for Sisters, for Madras, and for Hood River. And as I think most of the folks in this call know, that those were selected in part because they're all communities that are either on the way or kind of forming into a tourist destination of their own, and have some reliance on non-resident markets for retail support. And so this is just highlighting, as a preview to this analysis, some of the metrics that we're looking at as a part of that case study analysis. Our team has been interviewing the economic development directors in these cities to kind of get some insights into what the challenges they're seeing, what are some of the best practices in terms of programs for retail market support that they're providing, and how effective some of those programs have been. And so this is what I think to be a pretty cool thing we're doing, that will have some interesting insights for the conclusions that will come out of this study. And then next slide, please. And just for us, next steps, you saw a lot of the analysis that we've done on the resident profile. So we're going to be diving into some analysis of visitor trends. Where are they coming from? Where are they spending their money? To kind of get that other piece of the pie, right? There's the non-resident component and how much that translates into market support. We're going to finish up our case study work. As you may have saw at the top of the last slide, that was preliminary, and we still are working on buttoning up those case studies and finishing up our interviews. And then finally, we have a commercial demand model that we've developed for this project that looks at existing retail leakage. And so that's a term that defines the amount of dollars of local residents that are effectively leaking to other markets for various reasons. If you think about, you don't spend all your money in the city you live in, you might buy a car somewhere else, or you might be in Portland and buy an iPhone there or something. So there's a natural rate of leakage, but some of that leakage, if appropriately supplied in your market, could be recaptured. So we're going to be quantifying that, as well as quantifying growth in commercial demand for different retail commodities and retail product types. And so ultimately, we'll turn that into an estimate of your kind of market growth capacity over the next 5 years based on the growth in rooftops in the community.
So Chris, on that leakage, how do you or do you take into factor Amazon, for instance? Because I'd say there's a ton of leakage through Amazon. If you just looked at everybody's recycle bin throughout the week, you'd probably find half of it was Amazon cardboard boxes. So
100%, and that shows up in a category we call non-store retailers. And you're spot on. The growth in share of leakage in all communities to non-store retailers has been quite high. So yeah.
Can you track the cell phones carrier people of Amazon, FedEx?
That would be great, right? Keep track of those guys and where they're at.
Let's tell a story about maybe how we could get some road improvements done.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So with that kind of concludes the presentation piece. I'm happy to take any more questions that you all have, but we're just happy to be working as a partner with the city on this one. So
You sent us that, David?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. Some of it's a little hard to read up on the screen.
Yeah, you bet.
I think it's all great data. What are some other thoughts or questions? And we didn't hear it from you, Nicole.
I know, I know. I've talked to you, this group many times. I thought it was Chris's turn.
Fair enough. Any surprises, any ideas, any comments, thoughts?
I wanna know where the rents are going down.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not my
Yeah.
landlord.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, your landlord's pretty consistent when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Was there a certain area in town where you saw that rents were lower? Did you count?
We can pull property by property data, to the extent that it exists. And, one of the things that in a smaller area like Sandy that could be, impacting the data is you tend to have longer term tenants with less turnover. And so you might not be keeping up with market rents because you don't have that kind of natural turnover of tenants. And that's certainly something to consider as a contributing factor.
That's perfect. Thanks for that
That makes
explanation,
sense.
because that makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Do vouchers come into that, play into that at all?
No, the data we get is effectively broker driven. So to the extent that the data that is getting inputted into a transaction, is factoring that in. But we can't extrapolate the ratio of what would be a voucher or a subsidized piece of rent. So.
Or people that aren't putting it into some type of system that you can pull that data from.
Yeah. So.
Marcel, you were gonna say something and,
Yeah, I wouldn't know where they would get that data for my billing, because it's all internal.
right, yeah, that's what I mean by if like you're building it would be.
And the low turnover is absolutely, that's a big part of it.
Yeah,
Right.
all right,
Any other
cool.
questions or any surprises that you saw besides that one? One surprise I thought was when you're looking at where people are coming from to shop in our community there or patronize. I thought more from Welch's area, the mountain area would be part of that. Is that maybe not showing up on that list because it's just a smaller population compared to the other populations that you had, or was that not factored in? Like the Brightwood, Welch's, Government Camp?
We have the data for everywhere. So it just didn't make the top 6, those areas. I'm sure if you aggregated Welch's, Govey, Brightwood together, if you just considered them their own, like an aggregated thing instead of like because you have a small number of rooftops in each of those communities. I would bet that most of the people living in those communities are shopping in Sandy, but just because there's such a small basis, it didn't quite crack the top 6 in terms of market support. But if you took those 3 together in aggregate, it might get closer to a measurable number. And that's certainly something we have the data for. So
Sometimes I think of that whole area as one area, but it's actually broken up into those small.
yeah.
Which then dilutes down the buying power of that area, I guess, for the.
We just call it the Villages of Mount Hood.
Right, yeah.
Nobody can agree where Welch's starts and when he ends, right?
All right, any other comments or questions? I mean, this
I was
is,
a little bit confused about the thing that showed the people, workers, employers that don't live in Sandy. They were showing us like more than the close to half of the shopping or something that they were.
5,400 and coming from outside to work in our community.
Right, I could see that, but then the one below that was like 6,000 and something and.
Yeah, that distribution was showing that the distribution of what we call daytime population. So the number of people that are like physically in Sandy during a typical work week. And so the bottom number was the number of residents that are there. And those are generally because we know that most of the people that live in Sandy commute outside of Sandy for work. Those are folks that are not working effectively. They might be a parent that's not in the workforce or a student population. It could be those types of folks versus the top line number, which was the folks that are actually in Sandy doing work during the day.
Does the bottom one include the Sandy, the student population? That 6,000?
Yeah, so it's going to include all residents that are not leaving during the day. So yes, it does. Yeah.
It doesn't really include, I mean, because all the students from,
You have 2,000 cell phones right around the high
They're not
school.
shopping, so kids aren't shopping.
Well, that's
so-
why, yeah.
Well, believe me, they're shopping.
High school-
Yeah, and that's not based on cell phone data, that particular slide, that's based on data that's a derivative of census data, so.
And then how about, because you're doing it from cell phone, you may not be able to track that work from home aspect. Because Sandy has a large work from home population with our Sandy and fiber, and being able to have that early on is driven a lot of people to have that connectivity to work from home, and we know a lot of those there, so that would be the residents still inside Sandy that could be working inside Sandy, but maybe they aren't getting their corporation they're working from isn't Sandy's zip code, so they're not considered working from Sandy, right?
100%. The data lag that we have on some of these things, I think the most recent data for commute patterns is back to 2022, which is starting to get to the point where it's picking up some of the shift in the kind of work from home trends. But your intuition there is spot on, that there's probably in the data that we have an underrepresentation of the number of people that technically work for a company not in Sandy, but are physically in Sandy during a typical work week, at least for part of the work week. So.
Yeah.
Friend who's actually going back to work in Portland.
I think that's a big trend.
And I'm
'cause I've-
curious.
I'm
I've
hearing
got a
that
couple
lot.
too.
Yeah. So, is
Yeah,
that
more of these
fast?
bigger companies and others are saying, work from home's done.
Yeah.
You're coming
or
back
at
in
least
the
a hybrid
office
version.
for 4 days a week, or 3 days a week, or 2 days a week, so.
Yeah, and we've done some research on this, and there's some really good national data that has shown that there was obviously during the COVID years, there was this big spike in working from home, and then it unwound a little bit, but it's settled at a new normal that's been fairly consistent for about 2 years now. Where the rate of people that are working from home is still considerably above what it was previously. And we're not seeing a lot of fluctuation in that. So I think we're going to land in a spot where there will be a new normal of work from home, but it won't be what it was during the COVID years, obviously, but it will be measurably higher than it was pre-pandemic.
Which I think can do good things for our local economy and our small businesses, especially those coffee shops and restaurants and things here locally. Where I know Portland or big cities have been hurt by that because the big building, everyone left, and so all the, businesses supporting those to kind of dried
I've
up.
suffered
But
as well.
here, hey, I'm just gonna run down and take my break and get something at the food cart, or go out for coffee in the morning and have a meeting or something, so in some ways that has helped us. So, all right, any other questions, comments? Well, thank you, Chris and Nicole, for joining us. We appreciate it. Very interesting information and perfect for this group here. As that's what we're all about here, so,
Well, thanks for your time. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you all.
yeah, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Bye.
Yeah,
Okay.
it'd be good to get the.
Yeah, I'll email
Some of
you.
it's hard to read, but
Read all that small print.
yeah, that small print, I was gonna say, that city council needs to get bigger TV.
And smaller monitors.
And then, it sounded like they have, this is only one phase of the study, David? Like,
Well,
so
this
there's
is
gonna
just,
be Additional,
this is just first draft. of
First
what they're
draft.
Looking at, and they've got, this is what they've been working on now that they're kind of wrapping up. And then, it sounded to me like they're gonna be spending a good chunk of time on the comparator cities. So we saw one of them, but they've got 2 others to do there.
right,
But it sounds like, and then the visitor data. So they've captured all the local resident data, and now they're gonna go look at the visitor data and see how that differs.
So will this study have a breakdown on population from, male, female, ages?
Oh, yeah, there'll be
That's gonna be
tons of
all-
demographic information in this report.
so this is the report that you
Right.
used,
Right.
to help justify getting the banking situation and the finance plan and everything, really, which I think you have a great, story to tell around this plan too, to help others out
Yeah.
as well, saying, hey,
Absolutely.
this is the study, it worked, and this is how it worked for me.
Well, I use that study to build my business plan that I'd like to take to get loans.
Right. Yeah, so, that's good, it's a good investment for the city.
I had one comment, the Sisters and Hood River are cute little towns.
Mhm.
But I was just a little bit wondering, they are quite a bit smaller than Sandy. you know, one's like 8,000, one's 6,000 or so. I looked it up.
Yeah, no, I know Sisters is significantly
Yeah.
smaller and yeah.
And then 8,000 or so in Hood River. And I get that, you know, we've got more like 35,000 when you consider the, you know,
Mhm.
Oregon Trail School District and stuff, but our in-town stuff is about 12,000. So I'm just kind of curious about the results, especially from the retail standpoint, you know, how that could compare or inform, you know, opportunities in standing.
I think well, part of the reason I think we looked at both of those cities is because they're a little bit farther along on the tourism thing, and they're kind of a little bit more what we aspire to be, Hood River particularly. And so, you know, the point of that is trying to learn what we can from what they've done already and what they're planning in the future to see if that would work in this community. But I think that's why we went after those two, and then Redmond was more about kind of
Madras,
or Madras, I mean, I'm sorry. Is more of a kind of where we are now. They're really, I mean, population wise and demographically, they're a pretty good comparator to us.
And they're doing a lot of things right now when you
They
drive
are.
through there
Right, they
that
are.
is really changing that.
They really
town
are.
Around and driving things in and,
Yeah.
you know, for long to be separated from Redmond
Mhm.
enough in space, so.
Well, Silverton is another town I kind of
Mhm.
like to compare to.
We
Sandy.
actually talked about Silverton too.
Yeah, it has a larger population than Sandy and
Mhm.
but they're pretty far along on you.
Yeah. All right,
All right,
we're moving right along. We'll get
Yeah, we-
early hurt,
I think
Probably.
we'll probably get out of here
so
early.
I'm sure no one's gonna complain about that, but you have an update, David.
I
for us?
do, so, I have a current development presentation here. Please. That's it. Okay, here we go. All things development in Sandy as of May 2024. First off, urban renewal grant projects currently in process. There's 3 of them at the moment. Well, actually, there's 2 of them because this one's done. Sandbar, and for those of you on city council, forgive me for repeating. Well, I'm sure you guys have read a lot of this stuff already. Sandbar Barbecue, the ADA project we did over there to add a proper amount of ADA parking is now complete. That's the ADA parking part of it. As recommended by our building official, we also added a small retaining wall. You can see it kind of just to the left there. The reason we did that, and I know it looks a little bit weird, but the reason that Terry required that is because of the slope that entry is at particularly, and the way that works. We could see, you know, particularly if somebody was like mobility impaired, vision impaired or something coming down there, that could potentially cause some problems. So we wanted to make a really bright delineation between where the ADA parking was and the entry coming down there. And I think everybody involved was pretty happy with that, how that turned out. I gotta give credit to the owner of the business because we did kind of move the goalposts on him a couple times a little bit, and he was really good about that. In moving the goalpost. Well, in addition to the ADA parking, we did all the stripage and signage and striping, and you can see all that there. There's a proper loading zone. Another thing we asked him to do was in the parking lot along where that sidewalk is, that's on the north side of the parking lot, we asked him to put in street trees because that's a requirement of the code. And he did that. He put in the wrong kind first, and then we had to have him go out and put in some new ones. So there's some new street trees in there now. It looks like they're some sort of cherry trees or something like that. But in order to make sure that those grow properly, we've added them for this year, those trees to the flower basket watering schedule, so they get watered daily this year. So that'll help them take. And we're doing that as a courtesy to him for putting in all this stuff and you know, working with us. We also had him restripe the entire lot, which it desperately needed, I'm sure, if you guys have been over there. And then on the very end, over by the post office, you'll notice that the blacktop stops and there's a mud and grass area there. And with all the rain and everything, that turned into a mud bog. Fortunately for him, his business has been doing really well in the past 3 or 4 months. So the parking lot has been full, including that area, which ended up throwing a lot of mud around and on entry and in the parking lot and everything. It was something that kind of upset him too. So we had him go out and get a bunch of gravel and fill it in there. And so now that, hopefully that will, now that we've got some time where we haven't had a lot of rain, hopefully a lot of that water has drained down into that and that won't be such a problem. So, also, this project didn't really cost us a lot of money. I think this whole project was like, I want to say like 30,000. So the city's contribution to it was relatively small, and we ended up getting a lot of stuff out of it. So this was a great project. Project number 2 is this. I'm sure you all know that there's a new business going into the basement of the VFW building now that it's been redone on the outside.
Not until you told us about it.
Yeah.
So it's not that well known.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, they are, that project is in process now. The last time I was down there was late last week. They had everything ripped up. They had put in most of the new plumbing fixtures, and that also included a brand new oversized grease interceptor. So they did that without even asking us. They just knew that that was going to be something that they would need. So that was really cool. The concept there is, again, basically just a speakeasy with a really interesting, late night menu. These two owners owned a couple of restaurants in Oregon City, one of which Yvonne's, which was very popular right before COVID, unfortunately killed it. So I have really high hopes for these guys. I think they're going to do a good job. Projected completion date is this fall. I think you've probably seen the dumpster that they have out front right now. Probably won't be there for very much longer. So I think they're getting done with the demo.
Todd still own the building.
Yes.
Todd does still own building, yes. And there are a couple of tenants in the upstairs too. So
What's
that's
upstairs?
awesome.
Horsefall is up
Yeah,
there.
Horsefall's up there.
Blake's up there with his business.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's,
the
Lake Forest
Living
Fall.
Water Plumbing?
no,
Not that. It's the kid.
Oh.
the IT business.
It's an IT business.
It's an IT business. I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Yeah, I could see the logo and I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
Was it the one that was over by the?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So anyway, and then finally, scooters. So Scooters applied for a TI grant with us for a while ago. What they wanted to do was they wanted to replace their flooring. Some of it's kind of failing now. They wanted to replace it with concrete flooring, kind of like that's over at Brady's. And then they wanted to redo the bathrooms over there too, because the bathrooms were and so I've been working with Jeremy Klein for a while. He went out, he actually got 4 bids on this instead of 3, and the bids all came back really super expensive. So he's like that. I mean, he said they literally came back at about twice what he thought they were going to be. So he's redoing his application to cut out some of that. And I think this time around he's going to do just the bathrooms, which I think is the piece that probably needed to be done the most. So he should be getting a second round of bidding right now. We're literally, I mean, he could get back to us any day now and with those bids. And then we will take that on to the Urban Renewal Board to see what you think.
And that's gonna meet ADA, right?
Oh, yeah. That, as a matter of fact, that's kind of what prompted it to begin with. It's not, they're not very ADA compliant bathrooms, and he acknowledged that. So we'll see when that comes back, if that's gonna go forward or not. Then we've got a couple of code enforcement projects I wanted to talk to you guys about. Now that we have a development services has a code enforcement specialist, now we've been able to follow up with some of our commercial property owners and business owners downtown a little bit more that I think council wants us to, which we haven't really had the staff to do in the past. This has been working out great, in my opinion. So first is the lumberyard building. I think you guys are all familiar with this, over on Pleasant Street. This is what this looked like before Chris started, or Chris Relier, our new code enforcement officer. And this is what it looks like now. He's done a wonderful job working with the owners of that property over there, getting that to this condition. I honestly didn't think this was achievable. But I mean, you'll notice all the materials on the ground are gone, all the broken vehicles are gone, the landscaping is, all the blackberries have been taken out, everything's cut down, you can see the fence, I mean, fantastic job. So he's continuing to work with them. Obviously, it's not perfect, but Chris is continuing to work with Angela, and he's been getting really good compliance with them. So I'm so grateful for that. I can't.
So what's
thank council
moved the
and-
mark on that? Is it a bigger stick, or is it a ideas of, because they presented a plan in the middle of COVID or beginning
Yeah.
of COVID to do some changes.
Some of it has been just having a staff person to work with them daily because there's some additional handholding that needs to go on there. And some of it has been a stick. I mean, there were some fines involved and they weren't much, but I think they got their point across pretty good.
You know what their long-term plans are for that?
Don't know yet. If you were to ask the building owners, you might get several different answers, so I'm not sure. Yet, I think they would like, I think the next step might be, I've talked to Vicky about, she would very much like to get rid of those side buildings. I can't remember what the side street if it's bronze, but those side buildings that are more like lean-tos than anything else that are in really bad shape. I think they would like to get rid of those, so hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll be the next step.
Is there any plan for the, the old hardware store and all that?
Not that I know of, not yet,
That's
although
awesome.
we were just talking about that earlier and we might have somebody who might be interested in it. The question would be, would they be willing to sell it at its market value? The problem in the past has been that they've had properties listed, but they've been listed at quite a bit above market value and didn't get a whole lot of response that way. So remains to be seen. And then Sandy Marketplace, this is the complex with Bi-Mart and Grocery Outlet and Dollar Tree and all that in there. This is the other thing that Chris and I both have been working together on, working with the Texas Holding Company, Albany's Corbier, that owns the property over there. They've talked a really good game up to this point about fixing up everything over there, but unfortunately, we never really saw any action. And as I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, the condition of the parking lot, particularly over there, got pretty bad. So Chris and I worked together and we started addressing these and we started using that stick again. And this is what we've gotten done. I mean, they had about a dozen broken Spanish tiles across the roof. We got all those replaced. We got them to replace that garbage enclosure in the middle of the parking lot that was literally falling down. That's all brand new now. They fixed, to their credit, all of the broken curbs, landscaping islands in the entire lot, which I didn't think they had it in them. So I'm really impressed by that. They filled most of the potholes. There's a couple areas of the parking lot surface they had to just like cut out and remove entirely and replace. There was a broken planter box outside of the old photo restaurant. That was actually an old facade program that we did a long time ago. So we had a really big stick on that one. We could have taken our money back for that. So that was the first thing we fixed.
Was some of that piece because of the Jamba Juice that's going into that?
Probably. I'll get into that in a minute. That's
Okay.
a little bit
Sorry,
later. Oh,
sorry, I
no,
didn't mean to get ahead.
no, you're all good. And then the big thing was the entry path at scooters and their ADA ramp. And you'll see I threw a bunch of pictures together. Those two in the top and upper right-hand corners. I mean, that entry going into scooters was abysmal. I'm surprised nobody twisted or, sprained an ankle on that, about how bad that surface was. And Jeremy told me he had been literally asking them about that to replace that since he moved in there.
Oh, so he only leases it, he doesn't own that building?
No.
And it's owned by the same as the whole
Yeah.
complex?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, it used to be at Denny's way back when we.
Oh, it's been so many.
And then
years.
and
No,
then the
that's, yeah,
Mexican
but that was like the
restaurant.
original, that was the original, but
No, he
yeah.
wanted to do, a thing like, La Happy, the shelter gazebos and stuff, but. he
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
own it,
I
so.
remember.
Yeah, and Albany's Cormier
Yeah.
they wouldn't approve it because.
Oh, they wouldn't approve that.
Turbos.
Yeah.
Was it
No,
Turbos
and
when I was in
that
high
bummed me
school
out too,
before it
because
was
that would have been,
Yeah.
that would
Yeah,
have been good.
Allison worked there.
So this is where I can say
No, yeah,
I've
that's right.
been here longer than you have.
No, I just, no, I remember.
Anyway, there's a couple of things we still need to do over there. And I'm gonna go over there and check tonight for Chris, to see a lot of the lights in the monument sign are out. They did replace most of the broken panels and the panels that were advertising businesses that aren't there already. So again, bonus points there. So there's, the lights in those things need to be replaced. There's a couple of signs that still need to be replaced. The faux businesses, I'm gone. So they need to remove that sign. The sign for Dottie's, I don't know if you guys noted, well, you may or may not have noticed this, but a couple of years ago, there was a car that drove into the side of that building. And as part of that, I think that ended up breaking the sign into about 4 pieces. It looks like they glued the sign back, they're stuck it back up there, but it's missing part of its facade now. So I think Chris is gonna make it replace it. And there's a couple other minor things over there, but we did get a lot of compliance with them recently. They've kind of dropped off again. Part of that is because they've been telling us for years that we're gonna paint the complex, we're gonna do, and now they've chosen the colors, they're gonna do a tritone paint job on the entire thing, all of the buildings, the complex, not just the main one. But they won't tell us when. So now we're kind of getting to the point where, look, guys, you can't just use this to get away from code for, to avoid code enforcement. So tomorrow, I think Chris is gonna write them a letter with all the remaining stuff saying, okay, you got 60 days and then.
Yes.
So I think it's pretty likely that we're gonna see that complex get painted here this summer, which would be great. So anyway, moving on, there's a couple general development projects going on, or if they're not projects yet, they may be shortly. First one is 3888 Pioneer. That's the old Red Boot branding building, and then Grandma's house was in there for a while ago. I think I've talked to you guys about this before. It was purchased by business owner Nestakeda. He is looking to revamp the entire building, and then he would like to. He's got a daycare that's interested in moving back in there.
Isn't that what a Nestakeda person owned it before and made it into grandma's daycare?
Well, no, that was they were boring.
Oh,
They were, yeah, they're for boring. This guy actually owns, I think he's an auto mechanic. So, but we've, and his name's escaping me at the moment, but Kelly and I have talked to him a couple of times, and we're encouraged.
This building isn't one that screams daycare. I was surprised at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
what attracts it to being a daycare? I mean, there's a daycare desert, I know that,
Yeah,
right?
well, that's part of it. If we could add any business in the world, I would probably want to add more daycares because they're so desperately needed. It's relatively inexpensive compared to like other bigger places, and it has an outdoor play area. It has space for an outdoor play area, which is a requirement of the state, and that's a lot of the spaces that daycares have looked at around here. That's been the real stumbling block, is you have to have an outdoor play area.
So I know there was a lot of back and forth and controversy over
Oh,
the
yes.
other one, but now that that's been sold to a new owner, I feel like, okay, that kind of resets expectations.
Agreed.
And it doesn't have really any parking, and so I know the Barlow Vet place there,
Mhm.
Next door has, when they develop, I'm hoping that when that develops Junker Street out, that we're able to kind of get some angled in parking there.
We did
Or-
talk about that with them
Yeah.
actually, and
So-
in talking with the professional team from Barlow, the civil engineer and all that, they seem to think that they'll be able to work something out.
Yeah, I mean, some of that parking should, be required for the daycare too, is my point.
Well,
'Cause
yeah,
now all they have really is highway parking.
yeah, and part of what we were worried about is we didn't want them to start parking and parking on Pioneer because of the traffic, and that was a problem
Yeah, I
before.
remember.
And so we really looked at, with the street parking there on the side street, we really had to look at stacking. And that's where the angled in parking came in, or Pat, our new planner, that was his idea. He's like, well, instead of doing, street parking like we normally do, he asked Barlow Trail if they'd be willing to give up like a foot of space if we could then put in angled in parking, and they said, yeah, they'd be happy to do that. So we will get some additional parking there, which is good. 38756 Pioneer, this is that house down by the old little church on Pioneer. That used to be, oh gosh, I can't remember, I mean, what would you call that?
Is it the old bunkhouse?
Yeah, the little bunkhouse,
Flop house?
yeah, I've been told I can't use that.
So what's it next?
It's got,
The one that's for sale.
Mhm,
yeah,
yes.
This
yeah,
is like
it's,
2 doors down from like Two Brothers, right?
yeah, it's got the little church on one side and then the, that other house
The
that
one
has
that was
the,
just remodeled recently.
Yes, correct.
Actually,
correct.
Midge's and Dorn. Okay. They sold it to Midge and Dorn.
So, after sitting there for years and years and years, we've actually had not one, but 2 different parties look at that property in the last, since the beginning of the year, so that's encouraging. Unfortunately, I don't really know much more than that, but at least it's nice that people are starting to look at that now and think about what can be done with that property.
The
'Cause-
plans, I saw the plans, they were very nice. They had 4 apartments and 2 apartments down on the lower level, retail space on the street level,
Mhm.
and then 2 apartments above that.
So it's a knockdown, that house.
Yeah,
It's just tear it down.
well, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Again, I'm not supposed to say.
Yeah.
But,
But it was, yeah, but I think part of it is the moratorium and they only have so many ERUs based on
Right.
the bunkhouse, you know. So,
and one of the uses that was being considered, they wanted to turn it into somewhat of a restaurant, and they're like, well, I mean. With the moratorium situation we're in right now, I don't see how we could approve that anytime soon, and we would want somebody to buy something and then sit on it for.
but they've got so many ERUs based on the existing space.
Right, but if they were to do a restaurant and a tasting room, which is I think what they would have required more. Than what it had available, I think.
I think they had 8 ERUs from the bunkhouse is what we,
Really? That
That
seems.
seems high.
Yeah,
for
that seems really
residents.
high for that.
Yeah.
property.
For
I don't-
residents, that seems
Anyway.
high. If it moves to,
it was under congregate living.
That is true, yeah.
It was based on a congregate living, not, yeah.
That's
Cause you know, Midget and Dorn kind of reached out to us, asked us a little about, you know, kind of, and I was looking up the code for him and telling him to talk to Kelly and all that,
Yeah,
but yeah.
Yeah, Kelly talked to him more extensively than I did, but even that use though, I mean, it was just something they were thinking, you know, it was 30,000 foot level. I don't think that
I
they
guess
were
that's
like
what we're
ready to
getting at,
purchase.
the current ERUs for that building, they were not under congregate, are they under congregate living currently?
Yeah.
Today?
Yes,
Okay.
cause that's what it was, yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I guess the takeaway there is, hey, at least it's generating some interest now, which is
Yeah.
good, because it has in the past, so. Sandy Marketplace, there's a reason that picture's up there, and that sign will disappear momentarily, but, that's all papered up because we have a new tenant moving in that space, actually 2 of them, I think somebody had mentioned earlier, Jamba Juice, that is who's moving in there, and along with Auntie Annie's Pretzels. So, I think that's a great.
They're sharing the same space?
Yeah,
It's the same.
Same.
company.
yeah, it's kind of the same
same
company,
owner.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, and it's the same franchise too. I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
So.
So I think that's gonna generate a lot of activity over there.
Oh, high
Jamba
school.
Juice will do well here.
Exactly, that's what I thought.
My
Well-
daughter is very excited.
Yeah, no, I know.
Really?
There's-
I didn't know. I mean, my friends are doing
Yeah.
that, so I was like, really, Jamba Juice and Sandy?
Oh, it's gonna be huge.
Is
Yeah,
it?
it-
Well,
well,
I
the
know,
thing
I'm
I've
not a
heard-
Jamba Juice.
I think the high school kids especially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly who's
You
gonna
know,
patronize.
except for Scoop and Swirl though, but those guys are.
Yeah, I'm worried about Scoop and Swirl a little bit, but we'll see. what
That's
happens.
different product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The owners have high school
Mhm.
kids, so the high school crowd is gonna be very much,
Oh, yeah.
That's gonna be.
it's gonna be.
Yeah, Jamba Juice
Just from the
will make
social
money, I
aspect.
guarantee you.
The one in Gresham is very busy.
Is it, okay.
One down in Happy Valley does really well too.
Mhm.
Yeah, but what I'm told is there isn't another one around until you go down to like Grants Pass or something that has both the 2 of them. together.
Oh, right, yeah.
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 'Cause they have to go to training and they have to find one that has both of them together or have to do 2 trainings.
How funny.
I mean, it's hard to heat a pretzel again.
Yeah,
You
and,
mentioned
and-
New Orleans
Times I do.
building?
Yeah, and then finally, the New Orleans building, that's why it's in quotes, that's what we call it. It's the old Clackamas County Health Clinic and WIC offices there on Proctor. Recently purchased by Sandy's most famous resident, and he did a wonderful job on it. I mean, that looks great.
It's great, yeah.
That looks fantastic.
think
I didn't
you need
think,
to hire his painter to get the blue building painted.
oh, right, yeah, you know, that's actually kind of funny. I need to call Chris Gunderson, the owner of the Smith Building tomorrow and say, dude, we
Yeah, that
really
paint
need you to
job
get
is
that
pretty
painting
janky.
done. But anyway, he did a great job. I think he replaced most of the siding. I think they even sandblasted the brick a little bit, new windows, the siding and the paint. I mean, so much better than what it was.
Stands out.
I'm sorry.
It stands out.
Yeah, it really does. It really does.
Doesn't even
And,
look like the same building.
yeah, it doesn't. So I'm excited to see what Todd said. He's already got a couple of businesses that are interested in the downstairs. I think he wants to do some sort of a salon for his significant other, and then he's got a couple other retail uses downstairs, which is great. He asked me when he first bought the building, what would you put in here? And I said, well, I don't know about the downstairs. I mean, just general retail, any retail or service business would work in the downstairs. I said upstairs, you know, honestly, Todd, what I think would work there best would be like medical offices. Kind of like similar to what was there before. And he said, that's not a bad idea. So maybe we'll see a couple of, you know, I don't know what kind of medical offices, but that would be a good addition to downtown as well. So just love the fact that he's buying up some of these old buildings and fixing them up, man. Every time I see him, I thank him profusely. because it's not every community has somebody like that, so.
Has he sold the property there that he was looking for the other food cart?
Yeah.
So that is,
Yes, no.
we're back to the
That's
original
right.
plan on that.
Did he
food
sell it
carts.
today? Cause I'm gonna talk to him.
It's back to food
Sold
court.
it,
It's
yeah.
back to food
Back to
carts.
food
By
carts.
For a
Todd,
minute-
by Todd
Did
or
he sell
somebody
it?
else?
Yeah.
By
Somebody
somebody, it's
else.
by a buddy of his, whom I met real briefly, but, his name is like Fakema, or the last name is Fakema or something like that, but, yeah, the plan was for a minute that they were thinking about building just regular office building there and thinking about putting in an urgent care facility, which would have also been great. But with the moratorium as it is, you know, they would have to wait to develop that. And he said, so I have to sit on this property until the moratorium, and he said, well, you've already been approved for the food cart, so you could do that, thinking, well, you know, he would, and yeah, sure enough, he turned around and sold it to a buddy that wants to do the food carts, and that's
Same
already been
plan,
approved.
Same
So-
layout, all that,
What's that?
same layout, plan and all that?
Yeah, I believe
That's
so.
what I heard.
Yeah.
Where's
I
this
believe
at?
so.
As
This
they
is
got
over
up
by,
at the
Mountain Hill
Happy
Club,
Valley.
that space between the dialysis center and the club. There were two lots there. This is the bigger of the two lots.
Okay. Aren't they using both
They're
lots?
both
One
in
for-
both
Oh, yeah, they are
Yeah.
using, but the
Yeah,
other
one
lot
for
will just be parking.
Parking, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I forgot to add that in here. I forgot
Okay.
about that.
Do you happen to have any inside knowledge or anything on the Fresenius building that's there?
Fresenius building, yeah.
The what building?
Dialysis.
Dialysis building. Oh,
Wow, God, what we were talking to them a while ago.
is it occupied?
Mhm.
No, not currently.
been vacant for
No,
2 years.
yeah,
Oh,
They say they can't
Yeah.
find enough staff to keep it going.
Yeah, it was only open for a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I have talked to him recently. He is thinking about other things, but he hasn't really told us what yet. I think if there's anything else going into that building, it'd be something medical, but, and maybe the same use that it has now. I don't know. But yeah, he's thinking about a lot of things, I think.
What is the status of the Barlow Vet development?
That's a good question. I haven't talked to him in a while. I do know he has been telling us throughout all of this that he's ready to go. So, and he has been approved for everything. So, we'll see. That's a good question, Kathleen. I really need to give him a call. I haven't talked to him for a while, so.
Especially if that childcare thing is moving forward.
Adding that to my list.
And they'll be moving out of their current location.
Yeah, I think that would be the plan. They would, once the new building's built, they'd move the vet clinic from the old building to the new building. I don't know that they have any plans for the old building, but I'm sure somebody will buy it. It's I mean, just due to the lack of available commercial properties right now, somebody will buy it. He said his dream there, he and Dr. Houston would love to convert that into a Burgerville. It's like, well,
Been there, done that.
yeah, seen Burgerville and he built any new stores in a long time, so I don't know about that. I mean, it would be cool, but
We don't
Really
need
small
another fast food
restaurant.
restaurant.
Yeah.
We had, wasn't
Code
that,
even
what was that?
allow
that was
that
down-
down
Was that a
there?
burger building?
No,
What's that?
that's
It's
a college.
Is our
No,
code
it's
allow
too-
that in the downtown
you could do it.
Remember.
It wouldn't be cheap, but you could do it, yeah. And then finally, our esteemed chair asked me to add a little bit of information on Cedar Park. And you know, Kathleen, you probably know way more about this than I do, so please feel free to jump in. But this is the new downtown park that we're building over on the Sandy Community Campus. The demos are all done now, so we are now starting, they're getting involved in park construction in earnest. It's about a $3.8 million project covering 10.5 acres. And if you guys aren't aware, the park will include, you know, covered structure, new modern, really modern skate park design, all abilities playground, bicycle pump track, and a new mountain bike and hiking trail connection over Sandy River Park, which that's the thing that I'm really interested in. The estimated project completion date is in January. However, I've been told it may happen a little sooner than that. Depends on how things go with the construction. If we could get it done by like November, then awesome. But anyway, we're looking to have a ribbon cutting for this new facility towards the end of the year. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of what it'll look like. So this is the all activities play. This is a rendering of the all activities playground, or all, not all activities, all abilities playground. Completely ADA compliant and all of that, with a climbing wall and a few other things. And then this is the skate park. This is a rendering of the skate park and the pump track, looking down And it's just, again, that skate park's pretty cool. I've never
And
seen
that's not a
anything like
lazy
that.
river and a hot tub.
No, that's just painted for concrete. That is not a, that is not.
From here
a-
without my glasses, it looks like a lazy river and hot tub. It's kinda cool.
You've
Anyway,
been reading the Facebook comments.
I haven't, I actually haven't read any Facebook.
Where's the pool?
Well, I meant not like the pool, I meant like, anyway, never mind.
Yeah.
That was the
Like a
comment, though.
McMiniman's.
Is that a pool?
But anyway, there's a webpage up there that, the Parks and Rec Department has put together. That's got a lot more information. If you guys are interested, I just wanted to put that up there. It's got other renderings, video renderings, a flyover, a lot of cool information. So, and one of my primary tasks, once this park is complete, is for the pump track particularly, but maybe for the skate park too. I'm gonna start calling around, John and Parks and I are gonna start calling around and seeing. This is a regulation pump track, not quite sure what that means, but if it's
The
regulation, they can have,
international,
yeah,
International pump track competitions, like,
Exactly.
Red Bull usually sponsors these. The largest one that they had in Missouri, that was a big, when they first opened it, they had the International Red Bull there. I forget when they had it last year. I had kind of talked to the Red Bull folks and the Missouri guy, and he says, they're not as, at first, they paid for everything and sponsored it, but he says, when we tried to kind of get it again, they said, well, now they kind of want the cities to be sponsors of it and pay for a lot of the expenses, which, I think, that we could do that. We have people like Carol that can kind of
Mhm.
bring in a lot of sponsors for events and all that. So it is regulation for that, and it is the only pump track with, a large pump track and a large skate park right next to each other. So it's very unique in that way. And so they are trying to kind of really do a lot of marketing of it, soon to just kind of get people excited about it, talking about, if we can kind of put together some little, video with these drone footage, video stuff they have and all that, but possibly showing that like in the movie theater,
yeah,
you know,
totally.
and just kind of getting the residents excited about it to, what their appetite there. So it's really this is gonna be a huge draw for tourism,
That's what I'm hoping, yeah.
yeah.
And this is gonna become part of, I mean, that's the thing, a lot of Sandy's tourism draws are up on the mountain. This will be huge,
Mhm.
so that's good. Anyhow, some work from the strategic plan. First of all, we talked about action 6.1.2 earlier. That's the new retail market analysis, so that's coming right along. I'm hoping they'll be done with that in June. So by the time we have our next meeting, hopefully we'll have a finished product. Also, action 1.1.1, communicate Sandy's anticipated needs and advocate for expansion of local healthcare facilities that ensure health services with a specific focus on 24/7 urgent care. I have been having a conversation that has been going on for weeks now with somebody over in the Schuler building. They have a client that is interested in opening a 24/7 urgent care facility here in Sandy. They would like to basically take over the Schuler building and put it there.
I had heard rumor of this.
Yeah, so right now we're just talking, because again, this is gonna require a lot of planning if we do this, but Jason Schuler, I think, is on board with this. And then this person that I've been talking to is kind of a go-between between us and her clients. Her client is a MD that's currently has a 24/7 clinic out in Astoria. And they're a couple. And they would like this to be their second clinic. They were curious about a couple of things having to do with Medicare availability. I did some research for them and found out they could take, they can take Medicare out here. That was a big deal to them. They said if they couldn't take Medicare patients, it wouldn't pencil. So now they're a little bit more interested, and I said, well, I'd really like to meet these people and sit down and just talk with them a little bit more about, what they're envisioning, and I can tell them what the city needs. We're efforting to get that conversation underway.
It's like an independent urgent care. It's not affiliated with like.
I don't believe they
Providence
are
or
affiliated with
ICC.
that. It's just an independent one, yeah. And they tend to, I think she said they tend to specialize, or that they tend to take more lower income folks, but
This would be a whole lot more Yeah, it would depend,
Well, yeah, and that's
So
why
that's-
I don't know, but probably.
yeah.
And so I need to look
Yeah,
into, that would be the next thing I'd have to
Yeah, I
talk
mean,
with
you
them
might
about.
not want to get them too far down because that could be.
Well, although there, it would be, I'd have to find out what the ERU allocation for that building is, because they would be talking about taking over like 3 or 4 different suites in there. And so between all of them together, I don't know, maybe there are enough ERUs. I don't have enough information to know the answer to that yet. And then finally, this is just a little one, but I thought it was kind of cool to throw in 5.3.3 improved signage for Mining Park and John's Root Viewpoint. When ODOT came through here and did their project, what was it, last year, when they put in all the ADA stuff, they ended up taking down a lot of our signs, and a lot of our signs disappeared. Ryan and I thought that, you know, it would be a lot quicker to just order some new ones and put in some wayfinding signage that wasn't there before. I've noticed that there were no wayfinding signs pointing to Mining Park on 211. There will be 2 now. And then I've got some more signs. This is just for Mining Park right now, but so we can a little bit more effectively direct people to Mining Park coming both east and west on
Do you-
26.
Is it the same
Yeah.
format?
Ambrosini Design, yeah, same company. So there'll be the brown and green wayfinding signs. And then I've also got some new wayfinding signs coming for the Pioneer parking lot. Those were some of our signs that disappeared.
Yeah.
So so that's happening there. And then I mean, Johnson's looking pretty good. I kind of drove around and did a check on wayfinding and then the signage there at John's Root, and I mean, everything looks great. So I don't think there's much to upgrade there.
It'd be nice to light up the sign, to just put in some
Well,
solar
that's not a bad idea.
powered, you know.
And just
uplights
have, yeah,
on the
have some
sign,
signs.
yeah.
Ooh, that's a good idea. And we've already got electricity out there. Okay.
What about getting some landscaping on those bump outs that ODOT put in everywhere that are just, they just threw bark chips in? That's
I'm sorry, one more time.
all the bump outs that ODOT put in,
All
the, you know, where they did all the corn, they
Yeah.
just put bark chips.
yeah, oh, yeah. Okay. now
How
I'm
can you put
following.
a tree or a big concrete?
Yeah,
block?
Carl, this is Carl Exner's crusade. He
Mhm.
wants to find something to put in
It's
there.
pretty ugly.
Yeah, yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. I'm open to see if anybody has any suggestions about that. I'd love to hear them.
Trees and those giant flower plants.
I think that ODOT wants to avoid putting anything too tall in there. That being said, we could certainly put shrubs or flowers or, you know, something that hopefully would be low maintenance for public works, but yeah, I'd love to, if any of you guys have any ideas about that, I'd love to hear them.
Would, you were talking about the Johnson side for lights, the LED lights?
Just underneath the entrance to the sign.
Oh, underneath it?
Well,
Yeah,
just,
to basically
that
shine up on
up
it.
to the letters.
I was just wondering if that would affect, because I mean, it's such a pristine photo op place in the evening and
Oh.
at night, if that would interfere with.
It's
people's
pretty far,
photography.
it's pretty
Yeah, the
far
sign's pretty
south.
far away from
The
from
sign's
where
way,
most
yeah,
people.
it's quite a ways.
I
Yeah.
think that would be pretty, I mean,
I
I
just
like
don't know,
that.
I don't know, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I don't know if we
there's
can,
a lot-
because of
there's a
dark
lot
skies, I
very
don't know if we
nice-
can
So
shine
there's
out. We might
streetlights
have
right
to
That's
shine
true.
down.
There is,
Top of
so
it,
true. Good
it'd
point.
just be
Yeah.
highlighting.
Yeah.
No, what we need
It's
to do, don't get me started, but you know, on Johnson Viewpoint,
trim
yeah,
up
that's
those trees.
over the hillside, you know, we revised our code to be able to manage it like we used to as a viewpoint. You know, it's either gonna be a forest or it's gonna be a viewpoint, but it's not gonna be both. And so you gotta cut some of the trees and prune them up and all that to kind of keep the view. And so we changed the code recently, as you know, Darren, to allow that. Then there was kind of some last minute go around about, you know, that code didn't apply to the FSH. Well, you know, I sat there and did a calculation and, you know, map thing. And like 90% of the acreage in the parks and all that are FSH. So,
Flood slope hazard.
yeah, flood slow hazard. So, you know, yeah, the intent with the code change was to, you know, not have to, you know, deal with all that stuff. And so that's still being worked out a little bit. I'll just say that. So,
Good.
but yeah, it's important to be able to kind of maintain that viewpoint because it's getting, you know, it's much more diminished than it was 10 years ago. So,
And bonus points to the Parks Department. I saw that they replaced the viewer up there, the colorblind viewer. That was broken for a long time and they just recently replaced it. And I don't know who requested it, but good on you, whoever did that.
Dave, what about the building, the adult care building
Yeah.
back on where that lady escaped?
Yeah, where they got closed down the
Scenic.
senior living, assisted living.
Oh,
Yeah, what's the
that,
status of that?
that's a good question.
They're getting sued big time.
I read in the paper the other day.
The old
that
hospice building.
It's gonna be like a $10 million
Up on Scenic.
lawsuit.
Oh,
Have you ever been
really?
up there?
Yeah, they're,
That was-
we're not gonna
Vigorous.
see them again.
Oh, really? They shut it down?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They shut it down themselves. I mean, like literally days after.
I wanted to buy that building for make a hotel there.
Well, that's kind of what I'm asking, because
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it may be going on the market at some point.
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, one of the issues that they've had about that in the past was that, you know, a lot of the neighbors said they didn't want something like that. I mean, you could see it be a great
That's
little,
fair.
you know, because it's got a great view and, you know.
Yeah, the
Weddings
McMenamin's
and all
little
that.
bread and breakfast area.
Yeah, so, I mean, but I think it would require some sort of a zone change.
Mm.
Probably.
Yeah, I think you've got enough of the ERUs for it, because that wouldn't change
Yeah, you'd
significantly,
think. I
so.
mean, there's so many rooms in that thing.
What was it originally when it was first built back in the day? Was it a hospital or was it a hotel?
I thought it was a,
One of-
it'll come to me, not a hospice, but a,
Like an old folks home?
The
I was gonna
hospice,
use a different term.
hospice-
Retirement home. Yeah, yeah,
oh, I didn't know.
Nursing home?
nursing
Yeah,
home,
yeah.
that's, I thought it was
Ori-
originally. a nursing
original?
home.
It was.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
okay.
smells like a nursing home inside,
Well,
it
it-
doesn't now that they've gone in.
Well, it was a nursing home
I know that
right
sounds
now.
weird, but
I mean, that's what it was, right?
Yeah.
The lady ex-
Yeah, it was. memory
before they
care.
did the remodel,
At one point, it was a hospice here recently. and-
Yeah.
But before that, they were trying to make it into some sort of like hostel or some sort of, you know,
Oh, for a little
lodging
bit.
and all
That
that.
Oh,
was the
there was
same owner, and they were, the
the
original
weddings
idea
didn't
there
last
was they
Oh.
wanted to, at least what I was told was, they wanted to house the Chinese Winter
Chinese.
Olympic team.
Well, that was
Yeah.
recently, yeah.
Yeah,
They wanted to make it
In a school.
basically,
for it.
they wanted it like a pregnancy center, so
oh,
Chinese.
and then that was
women
after
could
that,
come
yeah,
over and
that's,
give
that's
birth
also true.
here.
And then the state.
And I think
no.
they're the same owners that, you know.
So
when
they
that
could be
kinda got
American
shut down.
citizens?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
and
know,
it wasn't, I
yeah.
think, again, what I heard, it wasn't
Oh,
technically
man, we're getting
illegal
south on
because
this
nobody ever
conversation.
thought of that before, but they
Yeah.
made it illegal like that.
Well, okay, well, that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
better
so-
open that can of worms.
yeah.
Wow. What about next to the Fred Meyer's gas station there? They have pits been dug here probably in the last 2 months.
Oh, yeah, you mean Brad Pickings?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this goes way back when I was on planning commission, so that's a long time ago.
so for you guys that don't know,
After
Jeremy and
Denny's
I
came
have
to
this.
town.
Jeremy and I have this ongoing, when we were on council together, every council meeting, he had to remind everyone how long he'd been on.
I only did that because it annoyed her so much.
So it's
So I always
a fun
had
game that we play.
I always had to put that in just
It's
to
an
annoy her.
inside joke.
I've never done it. But we had approved a building there on that site. Long, I mean, this is 20 years ago, so, or close to it, but what is it now? What's going on?
My understanding is that Austin Ernesti is gonna use it for something having to do with the Timber Fest thing that he does in the summertime. That's gonna be a secondary site for it.
Who?
Austin Ernesti, okay,
I can talk about this.
please.
Yeah, so.
You probably know way more about it than I
So
do.
Trajectory Northwest, that chainsaw competition that was out here this summer.
Oh, I didn't know there was one.
Okay.
Go.
so
Oh, you
there was
missed
a
Did you
out.
get off council? I don't know
Yeah,
anything.
you don't know anything anymore.
So, Austin teaches at the high school and they're interested in increasing the, knowledge base for kids to work in forestry.
Right.
And so, this last year they had a chainsaw carving contest in the middle of town and he's gonna move that outside of town. And they're hoping to actually drop some poles for pole climbing events and some different things, so it's growing. And it might be really interesting because Estacada is trying to rejuvenize their timber fest. And so it might be interesting to do some sort of, but anyway, it's gonna be June 1st.
In a month,
Yes,
But where's it gonna be?
next to the Fred Meyer's gas station.
that's a secondary site.
Yeah, they're also gonna be at the farmer's market site as
That's
well.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
No,
so,
And
So-
Ernest,
yeah,
Austin is on the board of the Historical Society.
Yes, yes.
Does he teach at the high school or just?
yeah, he has a club, he has a forestry club.
But yeah, I mean, I love what Austin's doing. I mean,
Mhm.
forestry, that's one of those industries where you can end up making it with a little bit of experience, you can make a decent living without a college degree. And I think that's really important in this community.
They just
to
did a
give
dinner
kids
at
that option.
Edgefield this past Saturday for a fundraiser and raised a obscene amount of money. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for what they did, I
Yeah.
think they raised like $20,000.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's a lot. So yeah, good on Austin. And yeah, he told me a while ago, he would really like, if it was up to him, he would like to take the Timber Festival and have it here in Sandy. Well, there's some people in Estacada that wouldn't like you if you did that. But yeah, I love what he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just fantastic stuff.
And then the last question, the property next to the Public Works building between there and that property there was purchased and approved.
Years ago.
I think
Yeah,
it was approved.
3
Yeah,
years
but I-
ago.
was.
It was approved.
Yep,
It was completely approved.
The
For,
zone, when I asked about that, they said the zone change was approved.
the zone change was
That property
approved.
was-
Yeah,
and
oh,
it
you're
was
talking about
Oh, yeah.
rogue fabrication.
Right.
Rogue fabrication. So where are we at?
Yeah, so the zone change was approved, but he never actually went through the
Submitted the
land use
plat.
process.
Yeah.
Which is
Interesting.
really unfortunate
Yep.
because he could get started now.
Yeah.
And he's been chomping at the bit to get started on that. His business is, I mean, they're literally bursting at the seams.
So is that not happening or?
Well, the moratorium
He's
is,
not in the pipeline.
yeah,
Oh.
is stopping him
He
and
didn't submit his stuff, you know,
Ah.
I don't quite understand.
so what Kelly and I have been talking with him a bit too, and what I'm hoping is that when we get to the point where we've distributed all the, ERUs to all the businesses or all the projects that have been through land use, there's a possibility we might have some left over. And if we do, I would really hope that we could find somewhere to put him there because the construction of his site isn't going to take very many ERUs. I think it's just the restroom. He doesn't use water in any of his processes or sewer or anything. I mean, he does metals fabrication. So, but it would be a number, he would end up tripling his workforce, I think, as soon as he has a space to put.
Well, and
people.
it brings it into the city limits. So
And that's also true, because right now his business is located at his home, which is outside of city limits, so.
Why didn't, I mean, I assume people reached out when we knew the moratorium was coming to say, get your application in.
yeah, we couldn't say anything before the moratorium was
No.
coming,
Well-
so
We couldn't.
that was unfairness there.
My life threatened. Not really.
Okay, well, we're coming up on, I like to end at 8 and respect.
Wow, I thought
That's
we were
what
gonna be done
that's what you
early.
get for saying we're gonna be done early.
Yeah, I know, I
I just
know.
like me talk too much.
Can I ask two things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Number one, I had some regulars come in tonight. I did not hear a single word tonight about Home Depot or Costco. How do we stop this? They were adamant. It was on Facebook this morning.
Oh my
It's like,
God.
oh, give me a break.
Oh, God mercy.
Yeah,
Just laugh.
so that's number one. Number two.
It's going in next to the pool.
Yeah.
That's what you should have said.
I'll remember that now. I'll let them know tomorrow.
That's perfect. That is a perfect response.
Just serve them another beer.
Second, I'm on the hunt for a piece of property to do my beer fest on.
Oh,
To
yeah.
have somebody
Oh,
either sponsor the
that's
beer
supposed to be
fest here
good.
in Sandy
Okay.
or someplace I can use in Sandy
Oh.
or rent or
Oh, that's
whatever. And we'll just kind of modify the name. It'll be Sandy's Boring Beer Fest.
I like it.
What do you have to have for
Yeah. What are you
Space.
the
looking for?
property? Like,
Just space. Fenced in would be really nice because then you could lock it and it could be a multi-day event. Without
power, water?
don't have to. Power could be nice, well, both could be nice because, we could go later. But beer fests don't go that
Is
late
there
normally
music?
anyway, and in the summer. There can be music, I've done it in the
The
past.
plaza,
What about
You
the
know,
ant
like
farm
the-
parcel there?
The Amp, that's what I was saying, the Amp farm thing, you could.
or the
Well,
plaza
depends,
here.
Like I say, I'm
the
just
Mountain
trying to
Music Fair
find
at
ideas
Gates.
because where I had it last is
Close.
shut down for probably quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody
No
know any more
comments.
on that?
What do you
I
want?
just
I
know
like their
I,
sign.
I just know everybody and their dog text me, emailed me,
I have
everything.
inside information.
Are
on
you
that one,
okay?
too.
Cause you had a liquor license down there. It's like, I have not had a liquor license down there for 2 years, 3 years.
Good.
Got out when the getting
Are
was
they ever
good.
gonna get open again?
Were they affiliated with?
Are we talking
the
Mountain
winery?
Center?
Yeah.
They have so many.
No, it
violations.
should be shut
It
down.
is
Did I
ridiculous.
say that out loud? There's all kinds of
I
illegal
can't believe
construction
it
in
took-
there too.
Oh, yeah.
I
There's
can't
a
believe
death
it took
trap.
that long to
It's-
shut it.
I don't know that they'll reopen.
Winery, where I used to be.
Oh, the winery. Oh, no.
But they're not connected to the con, the
No,
Mount
no,
Hood.
No,
they don't even like each other, but,
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, that's. cool.
but yeah, that
Small
corner,
towns.
as far as I'm concerned, that whole corner right there is cursed, other than a friend that lives right there.
Well,
Yeah,
thanks
so
for bringing it up, because I
Yeah.
think there's an opportunity that we could bring,
Yeah.
an event here to town if we
Yeah.
have the.
You say
It
in
is-
June?
No, it's historically the last weekend in August.
Oh, okay, good. That
But I
gives
can,
you-
I can move it around a little, but
No, August,
You need
August
to
is
have, you
great.
need to have bathrooms though, don't you?
You can do that.
Yeah,
but-
Yeah.
Report
Big
months.
houses and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Okay, I
wow.
mean, the plaza has the bathrooms and, you know, the music fair and chamber brings the fencing in. They rent some fencing to kind of,
I don't think it's big enough.
I don't know how, yeah.
I don't
what is
know,
the-
you know, we do, the first beer fest I ever did was the Nano Fest, which is this weekend down at John's Marketplace in Southwest Portland.
Oh, I
It's
know
in,
that
it's in
place.
their parking lot,
Yeah,
and there's 8, on
Really?
average, probably 12 to 18 breweries in there.
They have an event in their parking lot? That's.
Yeah.
You know what, I went to
Wow.
one in Hood River 20 years ago, and it was in a parking lot, you know, on the back of a building.
Well, I'm just thinking the John's Market parking lots.
We did, if you're familiar with the Mount Hood Center, ours last year was on the concrete that was behind
Okay.
the secondary building. It wasn't that big of a, doesn't have to be a huge space.
Yeah, I like the Centennial Plaza is the first thing that pops into my mind too.
You get a lot
Chamber
of
can do it, why can't you?
visibility from highway traffic.
Yeah, you get traffic both ways.
Mining Park.
Yeah, you can,
That was suggested by Carol this afternoon when I was talking to her
Mining
about the
Park.
Yappy Hour.
Yeah.
And it's just a weekend.
Yeah,
Friday.
if we do multi-days, it'd be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with Sunday being family day, which always seems ironic, but you know, a lot of people with kids and strollers and stuff. I mean, that's, they want to go out and have a beer too.
Mhm.
But we've also done it just one day on a Saturday.
And there'll be a covered structure at the Bluff Park, or not the Bluff Park, but at the, where the dog park is.
And in the next one over, there's 2 of them.
Yeah,
One,
it's kind of out of the way.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
A
fair,
little bit, though.
that's fair.
And in a
I'm just
neighborhood.
brainstorming.
neighborhood as well.
Mhm.
Safeway's parking lot on the side there, it's pretty,
Or even the parking lot at the movie theater.
I was thinking about the movie theater across in that grass,
Yeah.
but it's not a paved structure.
It doesn't necessarily, I
But
mean,
he's not building anything right now on it,
True.
mow it. The city has that land out behind but it's kind of more around the back.
That's
yeah,
the
that's
Champion Way
kinda out of the way
part.
too.
Yeah,
And that is pretty rough.
yeah, so is the other
Cleaned
one.
up homeless
Mining
camps
Park
up
might be a
Oh,
good
yeah.
location.
I like Mining Park, man. I mean,
We've had,
we had a beer
we
fest
had
there before
we
when
used to
last
have one, I
year.
have the glass.
yeah,
The beer fest, I thought this was gonna be an annual thing.
the Sandy Brew Fest. I remember when.
Yeah,
Scott
Sandy
Lasky
Brew
was putting
Fest,
that
and we
together.
But it was
in
also one of the
several.
concert dates.
Yeah,
It wasn't a
Yeah.
concert. day.
as a matter of fact, I remember that council meeting because it was the fastest council meeting I've ever been in my life. Because Bill was mayor and they had everything done and he gavelled it out in like 25 minutes. It was awesome, because everybody wanted to get out there. and do
we've
something.
had a couple of days of live music, we've had one day of live music. I mean, just
Awesome.
somebody different every,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had
Hour.
a Mining Park, you got a lighted stage right there you could use too.
Something to think about.
Or even the other stage back by the gazebo.
You start
So
a
I-
different
I
weekend.
gotta get started on it.
Sandy Mountain Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it just
think-
can't be
yeah.
the
I mean-
weekend after the 4th of
I
July.
imagine things have to be
It's
kind of
August.
fenced in, right? In order to.
Well,
for
it doesn't
liquor
have to be,
alcohol
but
sales.
security wise, it's nice.
Well,
We
what
didn't
they
do it
did
for the
at
Brew
Mi-
Fest, you just had a band.
Yeah, they had people at the entrances and you had to get a band if you wanted a beer
Yeah,
at Meinig.
But you're
And,
talking
uh,
about for like your stuff
well, yeah, if we go multiple days, stuff's gonna be, you know,
exposed.
you can't exactly haul the kegs and the jockey boxes and everything, put them away at night, bring it back out.
Sure.
I mean, you could if you had to.
So you just hire security.
Or you do a nice big long day one too. We've done that before.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and you know, I don't know what the schedule of the movies in the park and the concerts in the park are. Those are usually in August.
Wednesdays and Saturdays, I want to say. Look quick.
Yeah.
It may not have that information posted.
so my best just talking with Carol about it.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, that's where I would start.
Yeah. Yes.
Anything else? All right, we'll adjourn the meeting, 8:03. Sorry, 3 minutes over.
Sorry, my fault.
No, you're okay.
No, it's good question.
Had to bring up Costco and had I not said Costco and Home Depot, we would have been out of here.
Right? That did it.
We're all
Now you
good.
have your response form.